Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Beyond the Barclay. I'm joined with Morgan. How are you, Morgan?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm really excited about this one today. So we've got Alex who works in the Norwich City media team. Hi Alex, how are you?
Hi, how are you both? I'm very well, thank you.
Good, and thank you so much for coming on once again. I think we're recording this off the back of the press conference that you guys held last night for the women's team. Perhaps you could just open up talking a little bit about that and how it went, etc.
Yeah, of course. So we don't do regular press conferences like the first team, men's team would do. So it was, it's quite nice to do this. And we felt off the back of the Carrow Road news for our final game of the season, it was a good time to do it. And with the international break for the men's team, we had EDP, Radio Norfolk, and ITV down to ask a few questions to our head coach and to Hope Strauss, one of our defenders. And it was great. Yeah, both spoke really well. Andy's very, very good at media, and I've recently discovered so is Hope. So she's going to be selected for a lot more interviews going forward, which we'll be pleased to hear. But no, it's good. It was a nice, positive evening. Quite a long press conference, which I think is a good sign of interest from the locals.
Was it out of interest? Sorry, Alex.
It was 45 minutes in total, and normally if you look at what one of Johannes's, I'd say it's probably about 30 to 40. So I guess there was a lot of ground to cover, but it was great. Really good fun.
Is that a new experience for you?
Not technically. So my role is actually, I say 90% women's team, 10% any other business, which would be academy, first team. So I'm quite regularly in the press conferences for the men's first team, and we'll do the live tweets during that as well. So it's something I'm quite used to and grateful that I am used to it, because then yesterday felt like smooth, nothing, out of the ordinary. It was good.
That's really good. That's really cool to hear. I'd be interested to attend one if there is an opportunity in the future. But yeah. So did you want to dive right into the questions, Jez?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's sort of, segue quite nicely, I think. So, Alex, if you can just tell us a little bit more about your role as the women's football media lead at Norwich City Football Club, and perhaps what a typical day looks like for you.
Yeah, of course. So I'll give a bit of background. I've been in this particular role for nearly a year now, but have been at the club for I think it's nearly 5 years now in total. I started out with the media team, just doing non-football content. And then I'd already previously been volunteering with the women's team, so already had a bit of background there. And then eventually the roles just kind of merged, and now women's team is my, main priority, which is great because it's my favorite thing. It's a cliche, but every day really is not the same. You're planning content for the week on Mondays. What graphics do we need? What web stories are going to be going out? Have we got any appearances that the players are involved in? And does everyone know where they need to be and when, and what actually the appearance is? If it's a home game, there'll be a program as well. It's not nearly as big as the men's program, and it's digital, thankfully, so it's a lot smaller, and just you can leave it till the Friday before the game to get it finished. But that's a nice piece that we do for match days. And then at the minute, we've got Carrow Road as our final game of the season, which is something that we're trying to focus on. It's on my mind every day. How are we going to market it? How are we going to make sure that that we get as many bums on seats as we can? That's kind of what my week at the minute consists of.
That's quite a varied.
Yeah, sorry, I tend to ramble, so you can stop me.
You're in good company then. But I mean, I just sort of wanted to touch on how you sort of started and how you kind of got into it for anyone out there listening. Women, men, boys, girls, whatever. But like, how did that sort of first come about?
So actually, it was one of those. It's not what you know, it's who you know situations. One of my friends, just her mum happened to be the chairperson for the women's team, and at the time I had no idea there even was a women's team for Norwich City. This would have been back in 2020. And I've been a season ticket holder for the men's team ever since I was 8, so I worked out that's nearly 20 years now. Showing my age a bit. Obviously knew a lot about the club, but did not know anything about the women's team. And my friend told me there was an opportunity, a voluntary role, to join the women's media team, just leading on everything. So that would be photography, program, Twitter, match report, anything that was needed. There was a role going, and I was like, great. I'd just finished uni. I thought I would really like to get my foot in the door, even though it's voluntary, and try something new. And it was quite scary for me to begin with. I studied journalism at university, but I didn't know a lot about football journalism.
Right.
It was an option at my university to study, but I didn't want to pigeonhole myself picking just football, so I covered journalism in general. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was handed a phone and said, right, can you tweet the match, please? And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not an expert in football in any way whatsoever, or, football management or anything like that, but I thought I'll just give it a go and see what happens. And thankfully I'd watched enough Sky Sports and, listened to enough interviews to get by. But if I was to look back at those first few tweets from when I first started, I would definitely be embarrassed now. And I think it's fair to say I've come a long way. So that's just kind of how it started. Just literally took on everything I possibly could. I bought a camera as well because I thought, they don't have a photographer and it would be great to get some photos. They were not great photos, but at least the club then had photos. It was a lot of fun. It was every Sunday for, the whole season, and it was hard work, but I really enjoyed it. And that's kind of what sparked my passion and how I got into the role.
Yeah, that's a really nice organic story. We had a few episodes ago now, we had Mick Dennis on. I don't know if you know Mick, Alex, but
I've heard the name, yeah.
He was a journalist. Is he still a journalist, Jez?
I think he does bits and pieces for My Football Writer, but I think he's sort of stepped away from what I'd probably say is the mainstream journalism. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying the same thing, that when you go into journalism, it helps to kind of almost come in like a funnel, right?
Yeah.
So at the top, it's like an upside down pyramid. So there's so many options, and then gradually you'll find your path. Just don't close yourself up to any opportunity, I guess.
Exactly that. Yeah.
That's great. I always love those sliding doors moments of stories, when how you kind of found yourself on the way to kind of where you are, where you've been today and where you'll continue to go.
Well, my department often ripped me for a TikTok I made back in 2021, I think it was. Norwich played Bournemouth in I think it was the FA Cup. It was when we won 6-0 at Carrow Road, and my now boss invited me to watch the game. He'd come along to one of the women's games, and we got chatting, and he was like, do you want to come and that's not the right term, shadow the media team for the day and just see how we do things? And I, as someone who'd been a supporter for years, I was so excited. Seeing like Rob Butler and Chris Gorham in real life, I was like, those were my celebrities. So it was so exciting sitting in the gantry and watching the game from up there. That's like, it's crazy to think now the TikTok I made was a day in the life of someone shadowing the media team. They don't let me forget about it, but like, to me that was just crazy, like that I could be 2 feet away from Josh Sargent doing his post-match interview. And seeing Daniel Farker in real life, it was just it was so exciting. Just, it makes me laugh looking back at it, but it also shows like how far I've come as well in the few years I've been here.
Yeah, that's great. I love the fact that you made a TikTok video. You shouldn't be embarrassed about that, by the way. We've been flirting with TikTok, haven't we, Jez?
We have, yeah. I think we've got. We've got a lad called Oliver that does our TikToks for us, and some of the stuff he does is really good. And we've given him a few ideas. We've started working a little bit with AI now. I think one we did last week was show us Norwich fans enjoying a football match, and it suddenly got more surreal. And I think it eventually had about 20,000 Norwich fans in the middle of a city just going completely crazy. So it's, the route we're going down is certainly that side of things at the moment, for sure.
Cool. So I'll ask you the next question then. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face in the role? And obviously for listeners, how do you kind of get around them?
So for me, I would say, because I sort of look after the player appearances for the women's team as well as sort of the written and the content, it's managing the relationship with the players. So the women's team obviously aren't full time, they're not paid. they all have full-time jobs, and if we need an appearance, say the foundation would like a men's player and a women's player to come to a soccer school at the Nest during the day, during the week, it's really hard to find players who A, are available, and B, can get the time off work. So you have to give plenty of notice, and all the girls, I have to say, are so fantastic to work with. They are so passionate about mixing with the community, and they love these appearances, and they feel so guilty when they can't attend them, but it's not their fault. They can't get the time off work. A lot of their managers and bosses are really, really understanding about, their role at the club. So most of the time it's fine, but that can be a real challenge, especially when we don't get a lot of notice for stuff as well. So trying to work out, right, who would be good for that appearance, but also would actually be able to attend it as well. So for me, that's the challenging one. And then one other thing is, across the club, obviously there's so many different departments, but then you've got not so many that are just focused on the women's side. So it's trying to balance the resources that we have. We are a big club, and we're so fortunate to be in-house, but we don't quite have the resources maybe that we'd like to have. And maybe in a couple of promotions times we'll get there. But that's something that we, internally sometimes struggle with. But we make it work, and everyone in the club is so great at championing the women's team. And we're really lucky to have the staff that we do here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're also in a really good spot in terms of, with the new ownership and how big women's football is in the States. So, it's no coincidence the new owner of Norwich City is an American businessman. So I think that, surely you're feeling quite excited for the future, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Mark has expressed interest in the women's team, and, in the AGMs has said, we've got his full support, which is amazing. And Ben Napper coming in, he's from the get-go, he's part of a monthly strategy meeting we have about the women's team. He's there every week when he can be, and it's great to have him there. And it was the same with Zoe Webber. She's fantastic as well, and has always supported the women's team. And it's, she's the reason why we're in-house now. So yeah, we have real great backing across the board at the club.
Yeah, and I guess in that sense, the sort of infrastructure for yourself will only continue to develop and get better, and probably be easier to sort of navigate the challenges that you sort of mentioned previously.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, promotion this season would have made things maybe even easier next season. But even so, if we stay in Division 1 South East, we know that things are still going to be good. I'm still going to be here, and Flo Allen, the head of women's football, is still going to be here driving us forward. We only want to get better each season, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. So we're very happy, and I think we're in a very good place at the minute.
No, that's great. I think as well, like it does take everyone pulling in the same direction. I know it's such a cliched thing to say, but if everyone's got the same goal, then people kind of don't deviate from the plan, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah, we really try and push we're all one club mentality, as cliche as that sounds. But, we are all working towards the same goal. So you won't find someone who is not going to be willing to help you, especially in a project as exciting as the women's team, because it's brand new to everyone here. So yeah, it does make it, more attractive to work with.
Yeah, it's really, I'm really quite excited by the whole thing, because it's like I've worked for, I mean, sometimes when I'm sort of working with agencies, or it feels like so I work in sort of the tech realm. It sort of feels like you're in a scale up. You're like the agency or the company you're working for is in a scale up mode. So it's kind of like, okay, we're past the startup stage now. We're scaling up to see what's kind of next and where to go. And yeah, that side of things is just, it sounds just really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And talk to us a little bit perhaps about Flo Allen's role at the club. And I know she's been in situ now for 2 or 3 years, right? So talk to us about the impact that she has on a day-to-day basis, and whether she has sort of any impact on your role as such.
So Flo is great. I couldn't say enough positive things about her. She started out as our general manager, and then recently has moved to head of women's football. And she's she's fantastic. Anything that you'd think, right, who's going to sort that? It's going to be Flo. Yeah. She's, in charge of all of the operations side of everything. And yeah, she is the driving force behind growing the women's team. And it's so helpful that she has that background in football. So she used to play for Bristol City Women. A lot of people might know this already, but her and Lauren Hemp go a long way back. They played together at the Girls' Centre of Excellence in Norwich City. They're still very much in contact, which is great. She's great. I mean, she almost like, if I have a question or a problem, I know that Flo's going to have the answer. So her and I work very closely together. We're off to watch the Women's National League final competition this weekend together. So we've got a nice long road trip to Walsall for that one. We have a great relationship. She's just fantastic. Her experience is so great. And it's so good to have someone who does just push it forward, and she's just great. I could not say anything negative about her.
That's brilliant. And I think that leads quite nicely into the next question. So how has the coverage and media presence of Norwich City Women evolved since you started with the club?
So since I started, if we go back to my volunteering days, I didn't even know local media would want to cover the women's team. I didn't ever meet any until it sort of came in-house. And it's definitely grown quickly. We have regular local media at every single game, home and away. They are real supporters. It feels almost like they are supporters of the women's team, not just because they are also men's supporters as well. It's like they come to support us. They don't cover the men's games, they cover the women's. So that's really exciting, and they are great at promoting what we're all about. And also for example, the Scrimmage podcast that the Radio Norfolk do. They're great. They're always willing to have the girls on, and TNC, the Talk Norwich City, the podcast, they've had a couple of our players on, and it feels like everyone is now invested in what's going on and wants to get involved in some way. So it definitely has evolved over the last few seasons. Like we had the Lionesses at Carrow Road last season. I feel like that is only because women's football is evolving. They've been here before, but to a sort of low attended audience, and having them back last season, it was sold out within a couple of hours. So that just shows how much women's football has evolved.
Yeah, I completely agree. As alluded to the last time we had a chat, I've been involved in the women's game myself for near enough 20 years, and I've seen it go from what it was. And I always remember going to watch a cup final between Arsenal and Bristol City Academy, I think it was at the time they were called, and that was at Doncaster Stadium. So Doncaster, if I'm right, I think their capacity is about 12,000, but I mean there must have been about 6,000 or 7,000 there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going back very far here, maybe 10 years, and it's just night and day compared to that now. And you see what the ladies did in the Euros a few years ago, and subsequently the World Cup, where they just unfortunately just fell a little bit short. But that's I think for me that's played its part, I guess, in the development of the women's and the girls' game, and some of the leagues nowadays. I live in Hertfordshire, and I know that some of the leagues in our district, the girls far outstrip what the boys are in terms of like numbers and stuff. So it's only going to get bigger and stronger as the years develop, I think.
Exactly. And it's funny, whenever you ask any of the players on the team now, the women's players, when we go to these like soccer school events the foundation put on, you've got players aged sort of like, 7 to 11. And they're always just in awe watching them, because they always think back to when they were that age and they had nothing like that. They had no grassroots. All of them, if you ask them, started out playing football on their boys' team and just have since been fortunate enough to then join a women's team. So, it's not just media, it's like women's football in general has just grown so much in the last few years.
Yeah, the infrastructure. Has that been the infrastructure in place? I mean, I don't know if either of you two kind of aware. Has that been a governmental focus or?
I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't want to quote anything incorrectly, but it sounds like it might be, or it feels like just a lot of like you get a club like Norwich and we'll back a lot of the grassroots teams in the area, and we'll do what we can to support them. I know it'll be the same across the country. But in terms of government involvement, I don't actually know, so I wouldn't want to misquote it.
Yeah, fair enough. I was getting political then, which I don't do often on this podcast, so I try to avoid it. So I guess sort of leads nicely into the next one then. What sort of initiatives, projects have you been most proud of during your tenure?
I mean, there's a few, definitely. There's nothing that sort of like stands out as one massive moment, but there's sort of a lot of small moments. So our first Carrow Road game with the women's team back in, I think it was 2023, and it was the first game with this generation of the women's team. So I think a long time ago the women's team had played here, but not in my lifetime as far as I'm aware. So it was just this huge event, and it hardly needed any marketing whatsoever. It really didn't need a push because it was just so exciting, and the whole day was perfect. You couldn't have asked for anything more. There were so many goals. You know, you had Megan Todd's last minute sort of winner down the end. She did the Thierry Henry celebration with the flag in the corner, and it was just great. It was so exciting, and having 8,000 fans here. When the Nest typically we would get sort of 200 to 400 was just, it was amazing. It was, you know, we were all so proud of that achievement, and it didn't matter that the league was done. You know, we weren't going to go up, we weren't going to go down. It was just a great day. So that's probably, I lied. That probably is up there for one of the best moments I've had with the women's team. But, you know, all the small things like when we do school visits, so we take women's team players into their previous schools and they do a nice little presentation. That was a lot of fun organising last year, and that was quite a proud moment because it was quite a complicated thing to organise, but yeah, we got it done, and the girls loved it, the schools loved it, and that felt like a really big win, and just something quite simple as well. And then, yeah, content piece wise, you know, we've done a couple of pieces we're really pleased with. We did Eloise Moran, who is an under-19 Scotland international. We did a piece with Kenny McLean a couple of months back. She got her call up again, and it was really nice to put them two together. And yeah, I was quite proud of that piece as well. And yeah, I think, one final thing I'd say is when the Lionesses did come here for the Carrow Road game, being asked to sit in the director's box, I had never, ever done hospitality at a football game ever. I've always just been sat in my seat in the Barclay and very happy to be there. But yeah, it was just so, like, it's quite overwhelming. And I took my boyfriend with me and we had a great time, and it was just sort of like, oh, this is how the other half live. It was great.
The sandwiches.
Yeah, the free match food and like the company seats. It was great. And I just thought when it was actually Zoe Webber who asked me if I wanted to attend. It was just a real moment. I was just like, well, that you know, that is something I will be proud of for a while. And I didn't want to talk too much about it to, you know, other people. Didn't want to say, oh, I'm in the director's box this game, but you know, I was proud of it. And yeah, it was like a pivotal moment for me, I think.
That's great. I mean, Jez got a bit starstruck the other day, didn't you? I'm going to have to say this, Jez. I'm so sorry. I'm throwing you on the bus. I don't care. We went into the gun club, which we've never done before, thanks to Killian, if you're listening. Yeah. And Jez met Darren Eady, and he just froze. Didn't he, Jez?
Yeah.
Darren's a lovely guy, isn't he? He's so charming as well.
I think that's why Jez sort of melted, because he was melted by his charm.
Yeah, I just didn't expect it. It sort of he just came out of nowhere, and
well, Darren would love to hear that.
But no, it was a pleasure, and you know, Killian very kindly introduced us, and I think I sort of stumbled a question out from somewhere, but yeah, it was it was an absolute pleasure. Yeah.
I love those kind of those moments though, Alex. I think like you sat in the director's box probably felt a bit surreal, maybe.
Oh yeah. Obviously, having worked with Delia's Canary Catering on their socials when I first joined, seeing Delia at first was like, oh my god, it's Delia Smith. But then seeing her sort of, you know, sat just a few rows away, even then I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Like, you know, just being right by her side.
Funny enough, I met Delia at Charlton Athletic a few years ago in the FA Cup. Because I was, my next door neighbour's a Charlton fan, so he very kindly got me a ticket, which was in the Charlton end, but it was very close to where Delia was sitting, and I actually went at the end of the game, summoned the courage to go and speak to her, and she sort of said, she sort of, I'll never forget it, she sort of said to me, wait a second, and what I'd realised was the game hadn't quite finished, but she was so engrossed in the game and wanted to watch it till the very end that, you know, fair play. It's, you know, it goes to show the level of her support, I think, that for the club, that, you know, she didn't rule any distractions of the game. And then she couldn't have been, when the final whistle went, she couldn't have been nicer. We chatted for a good 5 minutes and, you know, talked about a lot about my experiences, you know, supporting the club. And no, it was just great.
She is fantastic. Her passion is unmatched. I talk about my passion for the club and the women's team. Hers is above and beyond. The stuff she does for the fans, and you know, we've been lucky to have her over the last however many years it is now.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm gonna ask you a slightly philosophical question now, Alex. A follow-up.
Go for it.
One. If you know you're talking about your TikTok video.
Yeah.
If that hadn't have happened, if you hadn't have done that, would you be where you are now?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't want to say that the TikTok, you know, got thousands of views and got me spotted and here I am. But I think it's all part of it, isn't it? Yeah. You know, I'm a strong believer in like everything happens for a reason. And yeah, I think if I hadn't made that TikTok, the day probably wouldn't be that memorable for me. But it reminds me like to look back at where I've come from. And I think that's all part of it, isn't it? Like part of, you know, your journey in your career. So I think in a roundabout way, I think you're right. I think if I hadn't made that, maybe I wouldn't be sat here today.
Yeah. So I think, I agree. I'm sort of believer of that kind of things happen for a reason. I just think sometimes, you know, these little things that you do, you might not realize just where things can go. I'll give this right now. I'm talking to you. I'd have never have dreamt that would be the case 6 months ago when I first came on this podcast as Jeremy's first guest. I never thought that I'd be talking to like the women's team media lead. So you just don't know.
It's funny how, you know, all these situations just come about. Is that the Mandela effect? I think. I'm not sure exactly what phrase I'm looking for, but yeah, it's just I find stuff like that. If you really think about it, it's funny how we all end up in all these places at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyway, Jez, over to you, my man.
Yes. So question 5 is, how does Norwich City work to promote and grow its women's game both on and off the pitch?
So the integration with the main club, not just coming in-house to begin with a few years ago, but also, you know, our social media. We have meetings where, you know, everyone is involved. There's always a representative from the women's side. I've already mentioned the backing from like Zoe and Ben. I think it helps that I sit in-house with the rest of our media team, the team with Flo, and the rest of the guys who work on solely women's stuff. I think that's a huge help. And like player appearances, we always make sure that there is a representative from the men's academy and women's as far as we can. So the hospital visits we do at Christmas, we started to involve the women's team now. Signing sessions, we started that a couple of years ago now. Make sure there's always a women's player there as well. But the soccer schools, like I said before as well, we really try and make sure that at least the women's team are asked to be involved. And yeah, sharing resources, although that can have, you know, its downfall sometimes, that is a massive help in promoting the women's team as well. Another example, goal of the month, we make sure the women's team is included in that, in the one that goes out on the men's account. So it's a few, like, it's a lot of small things that eventually sort of make it into one big thing. So yeah, it's really easy. It doesn't feel like it's hard work, you know, trying to promote the women's game within the club at all.
Yeah, it's good that you guys kind of you're sort of together in-house, isn't there? Isn't kind of like any sort of like siloed mentality. So that's, you know, that obviously has more flow to it, if you will.
Yes, it does. Yeah, definitely. I think we're a very good close team as well, the media team. So we spend a lot of time together, you know. Just Friday gone, 4 of us were in Bristol, and we didn't stay overnight, we did it in one day. So you're together from 9 in the morning till 5 a.m. the following day. So like there aren't many teams in departments in other businesses that spend that much time together. I remember when I first joined, my boss actually said to me, you know, the chances are you'll probably see more of us than you see of your family and your partner. So, you know, we've got to get on. Which is fortunate that we do.
Yeah, I think I speak to Jez every day more than anyone that I know at the moment. So yeah, it's a good job you get on, isn't it, Jez?
It is, yeah. It's almost it's a bit like Ant and Dec, isn't it? But
you know what? Funnily enough, I was thinking of that earlier. I was like, this is where we want to be, Alex. The new Ant and Dec.
Who'd be you though, Morgan? I think I'd be Ant, wouldn't I?
You've got a higher forehead than I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I'm just let's moving on swiftly. We probably should have asked this question quite early on, but sort of what first sparked your passion for the club, and I suppose you've sort of answered how you got involved. So yeah, how did you come about being a Norwich fan, I guess?
It actually comes from my mum. My mum's been a season ticket holder longer than I have. She used to go with her dad. My dad is hugely into football, but you know, I don't want to call him a plastic, but he sort of liked to come when we win and not so much when we lose. So sorry, Dad. But no, my dad and I have some amazing memories of Norwich City together. We were here for the Man City game. We won 3-2. One of my favourite memories ever as a Norwich fan was with him as well. Derby, 3-2 as well. Barkley going absolutely crazy. Simeon Jackson's hat trick. That was honestly one of the greatest days of my life. But yeah, no, my mum just, you know, started taking me to the games, and I think the first game I ever watched, weirdly, was Barnsley away one year. I can't remember the season, and from then on, I don't know why, but I was hooked.
Barnsley away to get hooked.
It for me. But yeah, my parents were really big into pushing us into sport. So with that kind of is why it all started. I used to be a bit of a tomboy. I would probably say in high school, I quite liked primary school, you know, being one of the only girls who was interested in football. And I sort of made it my personality, I guess, as we all do. And yeah, I just have never really looked back since. You know, I've seen a lot of highs over the years. I've seen a lot of lows. I think the first season I had a season ticket would have been the season we got relegated into League One, I think.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it didn't start so well, and I'm still here. So
the only way was up from there.
Exactly.
No, it's I think are you originally from Norfolk?
Yes, yeah, born and bred. I moved away for university, but other than that, I've always lived in Norwich, and I'm back here again.
What university did you go to, Alex?
I went to University of Derby, which is not the greatest city, not the greatest football club either, but
careful what you say.
But the course journalism was just fantastic. The lecturers were amazing, so yeah, that got me going there, and they were the first university to offer football journalism, and that actually did spark my interest a bit. But then I thought, no, I'll stick to journalism as general.
I mean, it's funny because we interviewed, or should I say, just before Morgan got involved, more on a more full-time basis, but I interviewed a guy by the name of Ruben, he's currently studying there at the University of Dart, and he had some good things to say about that university as well, and you know, mentioned that he was covering the Derby County ladies team, women's team, sorry, and was, you know, the university was actively encouraging that, and as they would, right? But you know, he had some really, really good stories to tell in a very short interview that I had with him, but some really good stories to tell about Derby Uni.
That is one thing they are great at, getting you out there, work experience. And I know in the football journalism department, they made sure that everyone was going to games every week, volunteering to do the match report, do live tweets. So that, Derby is fantastic for that. And so if you are looking at, you know, getting involved in football, I would highly recommend that as a university.
Definitely. I guess moving, unless you've got anything else to add, Morgan.
No, I was just kind of going to say, actually, if you don't mind me asking, when it comes to for those listeners interested in kind of, you know, potentially doing this kind of thing as their own career, when it comes to producing initial content, is that like a portfolio almost, that you do this content and then you go, hey, media XYZ, this is what I've been up to? Is that, I mean, I don't know if I'm framing that very well.
I would say it depends on what area you're interested in. If it's video and photography, definitely a portfolio is important. But if it's more the written side, I would just put yourself out there. Just email football clubs that you can get hold of and say you're willing to work for free. You'd like to learn from the media team, shadow them for a day.
Yeah.
Just put yourself out there is my best advice there. Portfolios are great, when it gets to more applying for jobs. But yeah, I think if you're just looking to get yourself out there and get your foot in the door, I would just say just be persistent and just pester.
Volunteer your time effectively.
Yes, exactly that.
That's great, because I mean these are the sort of things that I was never taught at university when I did media and cultural studies in London College of Communication. And these are sort of, I wish that you could change or you could go back in certain respects, but these are things that these tidbits are so important to anyone sort of venturing out into these fields and wanting to begin, because you don't start at the end, if you see what I'm saying. You have to you have to work out how to get round it, and as you say, like, it's a case of pestering and volunteering your free time. So I wish someone had told me that, but there we are.
Okay, so what has been your most memorable moment working with the team so far?
It's difficult. There's been a lot. I've had a lot of fun with this team, and it's like when I go and work the match days, it's like that's my second department, if you will, with the coaches and the players. A huge moment for us last season was beating #United in the Cup, who were the league above us. They had previously, in the 2 seasons before that we played them, they had dominated us and we'd really struggled against them. So to beat them 1-0 in the Cup was just, there was nothing we wanted more. We didn't care that they were in the league above. We just loved the fact that, we'd got the win over them. It was such a great day for us then. Then the first Carrow Road game always comes to mind. That was a hugely memorable, especially Megan Todd's final goal. It was just like, I remember getting up out of my seat and, cheering for that, which in the press box you try not to do, but it felt appropriate. So that was a great moment. Even things just like the bus journeys, they're just so much fun. I remember one on the way back from a game, we hadn't won, but spirits were just so high because, everyone was just trying to have a good time and, playing card games and stuff. It's just, it's times like that where you just think you won't get that in many other places. And the atmosphere between a group, it's just great. Stuff like that is what sticks with me rather than huge moments.
Yeah, the smaller things that contribute to the bigger moments. I think that's I don't know. I keep getting philosophical on this podcast today. I don't know what it is. There must be something in the air. But I was going to say it makes cherishing those bigger things feel worth it. Yeah,
it really does. Yeah, especially when you know how hard everyone's worked as well. Like the girls train 3 times a week and then they play a match. So they have their full-time jobs or college, so they are tired. But stuff like that just makes it all worthwhile, and then you just forget, how hard you've worked to get there. You live in the moment. So you're right. It's that stuff is what makes it all worthwhile.
Just a quick comment on your being in the press box. So, I mean, how do you stifle down your emotions when you're in a position like that?
So I really struggled actually the first few times I was in the press box to be in match mode rather than supporter mode. I'd find myself like clapping when, someone made a good tackle, or like, when we score, really trying to hold it in. Some clubs at other press boxes will, they're there for their team and, they will celebrate. But we try to maintain, a level of professionalism. I remember in the playoff semi-final against Leeds in whenever it was last season, and I was in the press box, and the lower Barclay was just the flags, the noise. It was the loudest I think Carrow Road had been all season, except from the Ipswich fixture.
Yeah.
And I was just staring at the Lower Barclay, just in awe, just thinking, God, I wish I was in there. And one of my colleagues actually said, you don't want to be up here, do you? You want to be in there. And I thought, yeah, you're right, I do. But, it's all part of the job. I get to be behind the scenes with all that kind of stuff. So, other fans might prefer that. So it is challenging, but yeah, it's all part of the job. It's exciting. It's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah, you're having to wear different hats. So it's funny you mentioned about wearing your media hat compared to wearing your supporters hat. I didn't really think about it like that, but no, that's a really good sort of anecdote way to kind of look at it. So I guess leading on to the next question, then, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for growing women's football at a club level? I mean, actually, this question is to both of you because Jez, you've worked in it as well.
Yeah, well, I'll let Alex go first.
Well, my biggest thing is, and I think a lot of clubs are doing it really well now, especially in the tiers below WSL and Championship, is get a big stadium game on, get the women's team out of their comfort zone a little bit. The Nest is our home, we love it there, but get the girls to Carrot Road. Bournemouth do it really well. As well, they're in the same equivalent tier as we are, tier 4, Southwest, and they do a fantastic job of growing their team. And I think it gets them noticed. I think you almost forget about the small stadiums where the women's team play, and it puts them out there. So I think that to me, that's the biggest opportunity for growing women's football. Just that, and more regular coverage of the WSL and Championship games. I think, it's getting a lot better, but especially in an international break, get as many as you can televised because people still want to watch football.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't care who it is.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. In general, media exposure. I think the BBC, because I use the BBC app. There are other sporting apps you can use out there, by the way, but I use that one, and I think the way sometimes it divides the content that you can see it isn't necessarily done in a way that sort of is easy to digest as a user. It's kind of where I work in that sort of field. So it for me, sometimes I think the message gets muddled. And so they could probably handle these apps, sports apps, news apps could probably handle things a little bit better if they applied a bit more thinking to their user interface, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's twofold. So obviously the extension on Alex's point about getting more in this, more at Carrow Road, more in the stadiums. But we talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Nicole, who obviously you'll know Alex. When we discussed having a joint day, so having a ladies, either a ladies game first and then a men's game, or the other way around, where logistically this might be a challenge, but almost like a back-to-back game, so people could have the opportunity to watch, let's say the men's game first, and then have a half-hour break or whatever, and then the ladies come out and play. Logistically with changing rooms, etc., I could probably see why that might not work, but for a day, I'm sure some provisions could be made, right? And I certainly think that would be of benefit because you might be getting a different type of consumer, I guess, that would want to watch the ladies' game, and then they'd be hooked. But I also think the club, and please don't take this as a dig, Alex, because it's really not. But I think the men's on the men's games, I think we could see a lot more around the stadium about the ladies. So at half time or during the game, and on the advertising boards around the ground, advertise the ladies fixtures, and almost really sort of push home the message of when the ladies are playing, and maybe incorporate a package within the season ticket for the men's and say, look, your season ticket here will entitle you to perhaps maybe 1 or 2 free games a season at the Nest, just to try and generate that interest, but B, push people towards going to watch the ladies a little bit more.
Are you angling for a job, Jess?
Well, you're going the right way about it. You make a really good point because, we obviously do try everything we can to push in stadium. And the point about the tickets as well. So something that Bournemouth did a couple of seasons back, it got a little bit of attention, was their owner said, if you want a season ticket to our men's team, you've got to have one for our women's team as well, because obviously they've not got a massive capacity. I think they could afford to do. I think they were in a really good place in the Prem as well. And we were fascinated by that. We thought that's so interesting, and we wonder what the feedback would be. Whether it would get some backlash or whether it would really help and grow our audience a bit. So it's stuff like that which is really interesting. And yeah, it's good to watch what other clubs are doing. I think women's football in general is still so new. Like there's still so much more to come. So you've got to take inspiration from other clubs, and it's nice to see clubs trialing stuff like that.
Can I ask you a quick question? Well, I mean, I've asked you about 6 already, but sorry, I forgot where I was then. Do you guys do field research with users or ticket holders, just general fans? Do you do any of that?
We don't, as far as I'm aware. We have obviously regular meetings with the fan forum, and we do take on feedback that any fans have. Nicole, like you mentioned, we work quite closely with her, and if she ever has any thoughts, we're happy for her to let us know and make changes. But no, I don't. Like, it's sort of like a mystery shopper kind of. Is that what you sort of insinuating, like having almost someone come in and say, this is what you should do, this is what we think?
Well, I'm not going to get into it too much, but like a large part of what I do as a day job is user research, and it's sort of going out to your customers and speaking to them and finding out what they'd like to sort of see, and then you get that data back, and then you're like, well, this is what our customers, they want to potentially look at. Then you've got it right in front of you. You can't make that stuff up. So it was pure curiosity to see if you guys did that.
So we have a really big data team, and they are great. They, numbers are their thing, and they are very consistent at, post Carrow Road games, going out to everyone who bought a season ticket and asking, right, what did you like? Give us your feedback. And so we have different audiences, to reach out to as well, that they create. And we'd sort of also ask if a fan bought a ticket to the first Carrow Road game, which was our biggest attended, and then they haven't bought another one since, we go back to them and say, what can we make you do to come along again? So yeah, that is a big part of our marketing, definitely.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day, so I'm going to pass back to Jess.
Okay, so Alex, how do you see the future of the women's game in the UK, and what role specifically do you think the media can play within, with growing that?
I think we've kind of touched on it a bit in the previous question, how more regular TV coverage puts it out there, and getting the players in bigger stadiums. Some do definitely prefer to play at, their home ground, if you will. I went to Stamford Bridge last year, I think it was, to watch a Women's Champions League game, and Carly Telford was there as the host, and she was just chatting to a few of us, and she said, even the Chelsea women's players, they way prefer Kings Meadow, I think. They way prefer it there. The Stamford Bridge, they can fill it up, but it feels different to where they are. So it's a bit of balance, isn't it? Really, you don't want to put the players in an environment they're not comfortable with, but I think the stadiums and the TV coverage is really important to help grow women's football.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's something that I've experienced as a coach in the women's game, where I was running a team in Luton called Crawley Green, and luckily one of the girls' dads he was and still is the head groundsman at Kenilworth Road. And towards the end of the season, we actually got the opportunity to play at Luton Town Football Club. And although it was a great experience, and particularly for a Sunday League level coach and team, we absolutely buzzed off playing at the Kenny. But you're right, it's completely different. And the girls, the women that play for the team at Norwich must really rate the Nest, and it feels like home. And I think sometimes that sort of change, although it's Carrow Road, it's all singing, it's all dancing, I think sometimes that change of location can really play on people, I think sometimes, but I think that's why it's so important that the fans really get behind it and really come and watch it, because as many people as possible that can fill that ground for that game is only going to be a benefit to the women, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the places like the Nest or like Kingsmeadow, they're more intimate. So I think it feels like you've got more of the crowd behind you, whereas Carrow Road is so open and so big, and we don't fill the stadium, so it feels different, and you don't want to take them out of that environment they're not comfortable with, and play the occasion. But yeah, it's something that eventually they'll get used to with time, I think, and then that's the way hopefully it's heading.
I hope so. I think, Morgan, that leads in nicely to the final question before the random question of the week.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to young women aspiring to work in football media? I mean, you've touched on it briefly, but it would be good to unpack it a little bit more.
Yeah, so what I said earlier, I stand by. I've said it so many times. Just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. When you're young and you show that you're keen and eager to learn, employers want nothing more. They want to see that you're passionate about learning, and that's where people get noticed, and that's where people then progress in their careers. Volunteering for me was really key. My first week at the club, the CEO of the foundation came by, and I'd seen him at the Nest, but had no idea who he was. I knew his name, but I didn't know what his role was. I just thought, he was someone who worked with the club and was a regular supporter. And he said to me, "It's so nice to see you in like a club tracksuit. Like it's, this is what you've worked for. Like, you should be really proud of yourself." And I thought, oh, like that's actually a very important person who just said that to me. Like, that comes from, he saw me volunteering every week. He saw, me just showing up, and having someone like him on your side is great. It's just, small examples like that is, I don't think I'm a case on its own. I think many people will find that, but I fully stand behind, just, you've got to start from the bottom. Everyone does, but you'll work your way up quicker that way.
Yeah, you've got to just, I suppose, offer, and I guess it builds up a sense, a certain sense of humble beginnings, as it were. I remember my first ever job was working in a fish and chip shop and doing all but like 2 years I was there, but I look back on it fondly, because I know I stank of fish and chips. It taught me how to work, and sort of it's a very humble beginning. So if people listening to this want to get into any of these sort of, like, I suppose, glamorous, I'm using the inverted fingers because you can't see, but quote marks, but you have to go the hard yards. You have to volunteer your time. You have to give yourself to, I suppose, whatever passion that you kind of want to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Nail on the head there.
Yeah. Did you find your place at that fish and chip shop?
God, that's a terrible joke.
There we go. Well, I suppose it's that time, isn't it, Morgan?
It is that time. And Alex, because you've been sat in on a previous podcast, you know what the time it is now, don't you?
I do. It's random question of the day, isn't it?
Of the week, but yeah.
Of the week, sorry.
So, random question of the week. Okay, Alex. Do you remember the TV game show Crystal Maze?
Yes, I do.
God for that, because if you hadn't, this would be rubbish. Okay. So imagine that you're in the crystal maze, and you're going to the Aztec zone, and you've got a team with you, a team of, was it 4 or 5 people, Jez? Do you remember?
I think it was 5, wasn't it?
Okay, Alex, you have a team of 4 others, and they have to be from the media team that you have.
No.
And you've got to crack the Aztec zone. Who would you take, and why? I mean, I'd say maybe not the media team, but some of the media team, as well as players and anyone else at Norwich.
Norwich City affiliated people.
There you go.
I think this is going to sound very random, but I would bring Ben Gibson, because he is just so funny, and I really feel like just you need a bit of northern crack in something like that, which is a stressful situation. And he just was a player who constantly made me laugh all the time when he was here. He wasn't, cracking jokes at me, but just watching him and, around players, he was funny. So if you want, humour, I think I would go for Ben Gibson. I want to say someone in my team, but I don't also want to inflate their ego. But our program editor and, website specialist / the funny admin on Twitter, he would be very good to come along because he's very intelligent. And again, another funny person, but very dry, funny. You might recognise his voice. He's the Irish one who does the post-match interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he would be a good problem solver. Then two more. Let's do a throwback just because I feel like Grant Holt would just be fun to have on a good day out like that.
Yeah.
And then why not have Wes as well? Just someone calm, someone, who can balance out the craziness of the group. I think that would be a good mix. And then you've got two Irishmen as well. So I think that'd be my final four.
That's pretty good. That was pretty quick, given that I landed you on the spot with that. Someone who won't be so quick, Jez.
Well, what context? Norwich City?
Yeah, why not?
I suppose this is a Norwich City themed pod. It would go, wouldn't it?
I'd have to come with you, right?
Yeah, you'd be there. Yeah, cool. Well, because it's weird, isn't it? Because as you alluded to earlier, I think we speak so much, we're sort of in sync a little bit, which sounds a bit, I don't know what, but I think certainly you'd see my next move. I'd see your next move. So yeah, you'd be there. I'll take Killian.
Yes.
Because I think he
wise,
and if there was they had like mental games, didn't they? So yeah, he'd be good for the mental ones. I don't think he'd get an automatic lock in. So who's that? That's two. So we need another two.
Yeah.
I would take, who else would I take? I would also take someone that's quite strong. So someone like a Seb Basong. He sort of was always a sort of stereotypical strong defender, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll take Seb. And then finally, I'm thinking about maybe going down the funny route like Alex did.
Am I not funny enough for you?
Well, I suppose not. Alex Tetty.
Okay, yes.
Just for that sort of club legend type, we've really missed that, as we've mentioned it previously a lot of times, haven't we? How much we miss Alex and his presence. So yeah, why not? Alex Tetty, there'd be my four.
Yeah.
Morgan?
Me, I'd take Daniel Farker. Because he's obviously as you say, mental guy, so probably work out quizzes quite quickly. Obviously yourself, because I need you're here, so you'll have to do. You know what, Alex, would you like to come with my team as well?
I'd love to. I appreciate you adding me to your list.
You seem like you're quite skilled at like visual things, so I take you. So I've got one more left.
Yeah.
I would probably take Adrian Coote, because why not? I feel bad that I've left Ollie at home, but it's what it is.
He could just dress up and be the Richard O'Brien character, couldn't he? So.
Yes. Well, it depends. Do you remember, Alex, Richard O'Brien, or was it what's his name? From the IT crowd, Richard O'Wady.
Richard Ayadawe, is it, or something? Yeah, I know the guy, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, because obviously there's two eras, wasn't there? Anyway, we've spoken enough about Crystal Maze.
Yes, yeah. Alex, thank you.
Yes, thanks so much.
It's been brilliant.
You're so welcome. It's really weird being on this side of the microphone. So I hope I sound okay. I usually hate the sound of my own voice listening back to interviews, so I'm not going to want to listen to this, but I definitely will.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and
it's been a lot of fun.
Keep in touch, and we're really looking forward to not only publishing this one, but also Andy Cook's episode as well, which was brilliant to speak to him as well and get to know a little bit more about the women's side of the game at Norwich City.
Great. No, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Right, so for everyone else listening, you can follow us on all of our social media channels, which is Facebook, Instagram and X. You can now watch and listen to the show on YouTube. Thanks everyone so much for listening. I've been Jez Davies.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barkley. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like us to cover, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the ball, City.